You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the next episode of Star Trek Prodigy's second season, Imposter Syndrome. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Jason Tyler. Hey, Father.
Hello.
Folks, we do have.
I'm not in my usual place. I should be down here, and Father Tyler should be up here. There we go.
Now all is right with the world. We'd get comments if we didn't move you around, folks. For who are listening instead of watching on the video, we usually are in very particular places on the screen when we're recording. So you can check us out on our YouTube channel if you want to see what that looks like. So we do have listener feedback at the end of the episode, so stick around for that. And I want to encourage you to share the show with your friends, help us grow this community and reach even more listeners. And finally, I want to tell you about another Star Trek, another podcast, Star Quest show that you can find on our network called Pray Station Portable. It's an opportunity for daily prayer, and you should check that out wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/PSP. It threw me off there for a second with the moving things around. Anyway, let's talk about imposter syndrome. It is really me, Dom, doing this, not an imposter. But Jimmy, can you give us a recap of what's going on in this episode?
This week, the kids have figured out how to use the spiral to determine the only location where Chakotay could be. It's a planetoid that disappeared from star charts years ago, and they decide to rescue him themselves rather than ask for Janeway's help, since the Federation might say no, and it's better to ask forgiveness than permission. The Infinity could take them there and back in no time, but they learned that the Infinity is scheduled to be destroyed as part of an evidence erasing procedure. It's going to be shot into a giant blue sun, so they decide to stow away and then cloak the ship before it hits the sun. To keep anyone from noticing their absence, they create holograms of themselves to take their place on Voyager, but confusion ensues as the holograms are too perfect and believe that they are the kids, so they want to perform the Chakotay rescue mission. Eventually, the two rocks sort things out. They overload Voyager's holomatrix, causing all the programs on the ship to reboot, and the real kids beam into the Infinity and borrow it. But when the holograms reboot, there's a glitch, and all the holograms of the kids end up with each other's minds and personalities, so next week the kid actors get to play each other. The end.
That was funny. All right, Father, your overall impression of this one?
I thought it was a fun episode in a lot of ways. Certainly not bad. It did leave me kind of wondering, okay, when are we going to see Chakotay again? When do we pick up with, what's happening with Gwen and her, state of existence and whatnot? There's some of the bigger questions that we didn't move very far along with, but we did get to see, of course, our heroes get back in the Infinity, which sets things up probably for the future episodes.
How about you, Jimmy?
I thought it was fine. It was a filler episode. It didn't really advance the main plot, but it was fine as a filler episode, and it's nice to have a little break. I thought so. I didn't mind them taking the time to do this. It's a bunch of fairly standard Freaky Friday tropes. Where there's identity confusion, who's real and who's not. I did like that they played it such that that the holograms are too perfect. They really believe they are the kids, and that's something you don't commonly see in this kind of imposter plot. But it was nice to see them explore that. They, of course, in order to get the conflict going, there's a moment where the holograms and the real kids are together, and the holograms leave as a group. And the real kids are like, how do we tell ourselves from the holograms? And they like split up. And that's one of the things you don't do in that situation. What they miss the obvious solution. Let's all tie a red cord to our wrist or something else, that so we can tell by looking at each other we're real. And they don't think to do that, but they're kids and not writers. So I guess I can ignore that.
So for me, I agree with you both. It was fun filler episode. I feel like we've had a couple episodes where we've been away from the main plot. I mean, we've had a little, we've advanced elements of it, the mystery spiral and the mysterious figure in the shadows, talking to Murph and that sort of thing. But the real adventure of out there trying to find Chakotay, that I think we're getting back to that now at the end of this episode. The title Imposter Syndrome, I think, is kind of fun in the sense of, what is imposter syndrome in reality? It's that sense of people think I know what I'm doing when I'm doing what I'm known for, but inside I feel like an imposter, like I'm going to get found out. It's one of those current events, current day sort of things that people talk about is, in my job, everyone comes to me as the expert and I really don't know what I'm doing and I'm kind of faking my way through it. And so to see...
And Jankum Pog actually kind of has that. He's not sure at one point if he's really Jankum Pog or not. Yes, right. And yeah, when you take it to that next level where, wait, so am I the hologram or am I the duplicate? We've seen this, in other science fiction stories, the duplicates and who, am I even the duplicate? We've even seen this in Star Trek other times. So that's fun. And more of the same trope, as you mentioned, Jimmy, it's better to ask forgiveness than permission. This is in shows featuring kids as the protagonists, it is very common. I think of like Stranger Things does this a lot where, instead of, going to the adults and explaining things and enlisting their help, they'll try to fix it themselves and they'll say, if we tell them they may stop us, so we'll just do it. And hopefully, this goes back to, do you guys remember the movie Iron Eagle with Louis Gossett? About a group of the kids who their dads were, because back in the early 80s, all Air Force pilots. And one of the dads gets shot down over a hostile Middle Eastern country. And so the kids all who have spent illicit time in training in F-16 trainers steal the planes and go to rescue the dad. Wow, is this a bad idea?
It is the dumbest premise ever, but it was cool at the time because it was pre-Top Gun, so we had it was the best flying stuff we'd seen in the movies. Yeah. But it was that same sort of idea. So in this case, it kind of applies here. It's a very similar trope that you've seen in a lot of stories featuring kids. Yeah,
and I think was it a previous episode or two ago, the idea of it's better to ask forgiveness than permission seemed to be out there, but here we have Dal actually sing it out loud at one point.
Yeah. They explicitly says it because Rock is the rule follower in this group, and she wants them to go to Janeway and explain and all that, and she keeps getting overridden. Partly because I think she's the youngest. I think she comes across as the youngest. Oh yeah. Even though she's the biggest, because she's a giant boulder. But it is interesting to see that Gwyn goes along with it because Gwyn tends to be the more level-headed one. But
she's also the one who got the vision of Chakotay.
Yes.
So that she's could be extra motivator for her.
It just occurred to me, it may be that Rock is always being overridden because she's sort of the stand-in for Worf in some ways, right? The big character, Worf, was always being overridden, it seemed like, in Next Generation. And
Yes.
Although he just wanted to kill everybody.
For honor's sake, anyway. By
the way, I wanted to mention also, like I mentioned, one solution is tie a red cord to your wrist, but there are lots of other equivalents, including ones that have been used in other science fiction shows. When we get down to the final battle in Ron Moore's Battlestar Galactica, you have a problem of, the Cylons are divided. Now, the skin jobs are pretty much divided by number. So like all the 6s are on the human side and all of the 8s are on the human side except one. And so you can kind of tell them apart by sight. But the problem is the Centurions are divided. some of the Centurions are with the bad Cylons, and some of the Centurions are with the good Cylons and the humans, and they need a visual recognition system for them, and their solution is elegant. Slap a red paint across their forehead, and it's a good Cylon. So, you've got your friend or foe system, and there are lots of just simple ways of doing that.
It's on the back of the head, too, so that's in case you're sneaking up on one.
Yeah, that would be good.
There's definitely, I suppose you could headcanon it as they're rushing, they're desperate, it's all unexpected, they haven't figured it out.
And they're kids.
And they're kids.
They haven't seen Battlestar Galactica. It's too mature for them.
We do have they have the opening scene where Dal is being chased and then the flashback, that whole trope of that, how many hours earlier.
We start with a proleptic temporal anachronism where we're in the middle of a chase sequence, and then we jump back to like several hours earlier and learn how the chase sequence came about, with Dal seemingly being tortured or chased by his friends, and it's really a hologram clone identity mix-up.
Right. So the idea is they want to get, they say we're going to take the Infinity, we're going to go out and find the protostar, and we're going to get it back to Tars Lamora. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, with the wormhole closed, how do they get it back to the right time? That's the thing. I'm wondering if they've thought of it, or is it just a hole in the writing that we haven't addressed?
I guess we'll have to see, because they don't explicitly address that. Now, the protostar is faster than the Enterprise, and the Enterprise can time travel by slinging themselves around a sun. So there are ways they could get the protostar back. They just haven't specified how they're going to do it. Right.
Okay.
And the Infinity, they've time traveled with the Infinity already as well. So there is some possibility there, perhaps.
They could take it on board the Infinity, maybe, if it's small enough, and go with the Infinity.
Right. Although the Infinity went through the wormhole to time travel. It didn't time travel.
Yeah, but then Jacob reconfigured it.
Oh, right. I forgot that bit.
One question I had in this episode, because they're going to destroy the Infinity by launching it into a blue sun to cover up any evidence of its existence, because as the Andorian dude acknowledges, it breaks like 3 treaties. And so I can buy that they're gonna, I maybe in a post-scarcity society you can just shoot high tech into suns, but today would be like, let's take it back and take it apart and maybe use it for Black Ops in the future. But here they're just going to shoot it into the sun, and so okay, fine. But didn't you tell us in like the first episode that this is a classified ship that almost nobody on board knows about?
Right.
And yet they have announcements going over the intercom saying all hands T-30 to Infinity launch, and Janeway says 10 minutes to Infinity launch. Is like, when did the whole crew suddenly get their clearances upped?
Yeah. The security around the Infinity is something I've found very strange the whole time, right? When we first saw the Infinity, the only security they had for it was the fact that it was cloaked. There were no guards. There was no, way to prevent people from getting into Shuttle Bay 3 or whatever.
It was sort of hide it in not plain sight.
Exactly. Now, this time, the security seems to have increased, because when our heroes try to go to it, they're stopped before they get there. But Commander Tysus, the Andorian there, he tells them way too much. Why does, these kids are basically on restricted access, and he tells them all that, this is going to be destroyed. We've broken 3 treaties, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, dude, you're giving some ammo to a group that could testify against you in a court-martial or something at the very least.
Right. Well, and the eventual solution, which is these emergency site-to-site transport, would have solved, like if they'd thought of that first, they would have prevented almost everything. I know that they're trying to leave behind their doubles in order to, so that no one knows they're gone, which, gosh, that seems really like that wouldn't work. It wouldn't fool anyone for very long. But
that's why they made him so perfect, so they could impersonate them for without.
I guess.
I mean, they even say that the zero one can read the mind of the other holograms, which is bizarre, and that they can pass, biomedical scans and stuff. So I don't know how, but okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it doesn't bear too much poking and prodding and pulling apart the layers, I suppose. But like we said, I think at the top, it was a fun little filler episode and to have some sort of running around the ship antics, which is what we got.
Yeah. I like some of the lines that Jankum got when they're having the battle with each other. With the clones, I may say clones, but I mean hologram clones.
Yep.
Jankum at one point punches one of the Jankums punches the other Jankum and says, "Take that, imPOGster." and that was nice. And then after they overload the holomatrix, so all the holograms on the ship, including the Doctor, vanish. Jankum says, "Jankum is Jankum after all. Existential crisis averted." And that was nice.
Yeah.
One of the things that really struck me in this episode, I've kind of noticed it before, but I noticed it again in this episode, is they're animating the Doctor to look older than he did on Voyager. And I'm not sure why they're doing that, because as a hologram, he doesn't have to age. And so, I mean, I know that they're going to have a version of the Doctor in Starfleet Academy, and obviously Robert Picardo is going to look older in that. But that's 1,000 years in the future. This is, 3 or something. Right. So I don't know why they're making him look older here.
I wonder if they're going back to that Voyager episode where Janeway sees
Living Witness.
Yeah, and he, it's after they're back and everyone is older, made up to look older. Including the Doctor, wasn't he made up to look older? And explains he wanted to age.
That I don't remember, but I do remember the episode "Living Witness," which is like 800 years in the future in the Delta Quadrant, and the Doctor is the only survivor of Voyager.
Yeah. No, that wasn't the one I was thinking of. But there's one where Janeway, I think, is fooled into thinking, or I forget exactly how it happens, but that the ship has gotten back to the Alpha Quadrant, and everyone is older. It's years later, and the Doctor's married or something like that, and looks older, because he wants to age along with people. Yeah. So,
I would assume it's because he wants to look older along with everyone else or something. Kind of like in the Next Generation finale, All Good Things. Data has this streak of gray hair that he's added to his hair to look like he's aged in some way.
Right. Or in the Picard series where
well,
but look older. The Doctor does have a interesting a few good lines when Janeway's asking him how his mentees are doing. He says they've been nothing but honest, open, and cooperative usually. which is a nice contradiction in one sentence. He's suspicious of them. They are acting a little suspicious, but not enough to really get. I would think after all this time, after everything that's happened, you'd be a little more hands-on in your oversight of these kids on your ship. But
one thing that we did get some additional character development on Zero in this episode, because they started hinting at it last episode or a couple of episodes ago, that Majel and Zero have a child TV friendly romance in the Offing. And they definitely followed up on that in this one, where last episode, they showed us that Majel had gone back to her Nova Squad buddies rather than hanging out with the kids, which is understandable. But then in this episode, she starts to apologize in the middle of the hologram crisis. She starts to apologize to Zero for having been distant. And she's clearly interested in him. And then they get distracted and they can't follow it up at the moment. But then later, as they're trying to get to the Infinity after they've kind of solved the clone problem. They're trying to get to the Infinity, and they're intercepted. And before by the Doctor. Oh, I know what it was. I was also going to mention, they say they got the idea, and we didn't mention this last episode, but when Zero was distracting the Doctor an episode or so ago, he asked him to tell him about his latest holo-novel, which involves, of course, holograms. And in this episode, they said that they got the idea to create the hologram doubles because there's like 6 Rodrigo holograms in the Doctor's Love in the Time of Holograms novel, where there's multiple copies of the same person. And they got the idea for this from that. They didn't spell it out as clearly as I just did, but that's basically, they say they got the idea from the Doctor's holo-novel. Well, the Doctor intercepts them and is about to derail their ability to get to the Infinity. And I don't think Majel knows exactly what's going on at this point, but she shows up in the corridor and says to the Doctor that she understands that he's an opera singer, and it would be very interesting to hear him, sing. And of course, the Doctor, being as self-absorbed as he is, immediately switches tracks to that and goes to get ready to sing for Majel. And Zero and the kids are like, "You just lied for us." And she says, "I merely suggested. And it is important to help one's real friends." So she knows they're her real friends, not the Nova Squadron people. And then telepathically, so the kids don't hear it, she says to Zero, "Especially one as fascinating as you." So we've clearly got romantic vibes going between Majel and Zero here.
Yep. Modern Trek seems to be especially fascinated with the idea of Vulcan intraspecies romance. We just you haven't seen season 5 of Discovery, Jimmy, but they took the Vulcan president and
with Saru,
yeah, that they end up together. Then in Strange New Worlds, we have Chapel and Spock, which I know we had in TOS, sort of, not really. But it was one way.
It was one-sided.
Yeah.
Right.
And then here, and it's kind of interesting.
And Spock himself is a hybrid, so that raises the question.
Yeah. And it's just kind of interesting how fascinated all of these different series seem to be with, and I think partly because, the unemotional Vulcan, the repressed feelings, and there's among a certain set of people, probably, fans.
This was a huge thing. This was a huge thing in fandom in the 60s and 70s. Imagine in Spock in romantic situations.
Right. Yeah, that the repressed emotional man, letting out his emotion, is fascinating for a certain
the
demographic.
The wily female character getting Spock to finally loosen up and become romantic. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, isn't that really the origin of the Mary Sue trope in fan fiction?
Well, I don't know that it's not the origin, but it's certainly related to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it is interesting to see, and having Zero, and you could see the connection because Zero is intellectual and that sort of thing. So there's that idea.
And they set us up in episode 1 where the kids are at Starfleet Academy, and Zero is clearly jealous of looking at human or humanoids that are physical, holding hands and stuff like that. And so I said they're going to do something with that.
Right, because as a Medusan, he's incorporeal. So interesting. So Majel does help them get to the Infinity, and they get away. They're all on board, right? They didn't leave anybody behind.
Yeah, they're all on board, and they did a nice thing where they're intercutting between different locations on Voyager, and they launch the ship. And it's not clear to the audience if the kids are on board. And then we see the kids running towards the shuttle bay, and the ship just takes off without them, and they are not on board. And so we have this nice temporary setback. And then the next scene, they're like beaming in to the to the Infinity.
Right.
Yep. And then they cloak just as they go out of sensor range because of the blue. I don't know why it needed to be a blue giant, but
there are blue giants, but it doesn't have to be blue or a giant. I mean, any star would do, except maybe a brown dwarf.
But they specifically set out for this one. Which, maybe cloaking devices can only be destroyed. I don't know. Headcanon. So, but you mentioned in the end that as the rebooted holograms come online, we get the very fun moment of all of them having their personalities mixed up, and starting imagining what's going to happen. What do you think? I haven't watched ahead, and it's not really all that important. We'll see it, but what do you think is going to happen? Is it going to be the Voyager crew will immediately know, or they're going to have to suss out why they're acting strangely?
If I were writing the next episode, the way I would play it is it certainly will not be immediate. It certainly would not be immediate. But the Voyager crew would start to notice that there are something strange going on with the kids, and probably the doctor, and then maybe Janeway, and the Andorian and the Tellarite maybe, because they're the only real established characters we have of the Voyager adult crew,
right? And
I either would let the kids get away with it, I'd have what I'd would be tempted to do as a writer is I would have the holograms realize something's mixed up. And then it's like, I've got a piece of you and you've got a piece of me, and we've got to somehow compensate here. And so I would create a situation where you have the kid actors playing each other, trying to play themselves.
Yeah.
And maybe get away with it long enough for the real kids to get back. Or late in the game, they may have to give up the ghost and say, okay, here's what's really going on. Yeah. But it would not be immediate either way. This is a dramatic situation they set up, and you want to let that play out. And you've only got 20 minutes to do it.
Yeah. Now, they did say Voyager's heading back to
Earth.
To Earth. So something's got to sort of stop them from going, because she's going to give up the ship.
Well, I don't know that she's given up the ship, but the Infinity is so fast it can get to Chakotay and get back to where Voyager's going before their mission is completed.
Okay. I thought Janeway said that they've been ordered to return, and she's not going to be in command of the ship anymore.
I didn't get that, but maybe.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, in any case, that should be interesting to see in the next episode, which is another play on a pun, the Fast and the Curious, which is a play on the movie franchise Fast and Furious.
The Fast and the Furious, yep.
Yeah. One thing interesting with the whole hologram situation, it seems, I guess, this Voyager A has holo emitters all over the ship, because they say that these holo-doubles can go anywhere on the ship, but they can't leave the ship because they would blink out at that point. But also, when all of the holograms reset, I don't understand why the Doctor also gets reset, because he's got his holo emitter on his arm. And so it seems like his holo program should be sustained by that emitter. It's like if I'm at my office and all of our office telephones go down, the whole building, all of our landlines are down, but my cell phone is still going to work unless there's a separate outage causing that.
I suppose, they don't address this, so this is just headcanon, but I would suppose that since there are holo emitters all over the ship, he was using those holo emitters and not his mobile emitter at that moment, and that might, save battery power on the mobile emitter or something.
That the mobile emitter is present, but it's not on, maybe. Okay.
So that he doesn't have to go get it if he has to leave the ship unexpectedly or something.
Right.
Yeah, no, but I get what you're saying. Yeah, it did seem odd that he rebooted too. But from a writing standpoint, they wanted to make it clear that everything rebooted, including Council Noom's holo program where he was laying in the boat. that was funny. Luckily, it wasn't something else. He was bathing or something.
This is a kid-friendly show. This is not Deep Space Nine.
Deep Space Nine would totally have done the. Quark in the bath or something. Any other notes on this one, Father?
You know, I enjoyed this one a lot more watching it the second time through actually than I did the first. And as I said at the beginning, in some ways it did not move the overall plot along as much, but I think the second time through I enjoyed that little bit of a break, I think, as somebody mentioned earlier. And hopefully we start, with all of our heroes together on the Infinity, hopefully they'll be out looking for Chakotay for a while in the next number of episodes.
Sometimes knowing where the story is going makes the story more enjoyable.
Oh yeah. Oh, very much so. I've noted for years that I never enjoy an album as much on the first listen through as I do on repeat listens. And I tend to do the same thing with books, with novels and stories. Once I know where it's going, I mean, I do enjoy surprise.
Yeah.
But once I know where it's going, whether it's music or with fiction, I understand it better and what the author's trying to accomplish. And I see pieces that are setting us up for stuff later that then get paid off, not all of which were obvious on the first go through.
Right. Yeah, I just finished rewatching Rings of Power season 1 in preparation for the next season, which is about to drop, and knowing there was some hidden surprises in it, and knowing those surprises were coming made how the characters were building up to that and what they were doing a lot more interesting to me. And so, yeah, I enjoy. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I enjoy rewatching Star Trek over and over again, is because they bear rewatching. They have that enjoyment of even though you know where the story might be going. When I remember what the story was from the last time I watched it, it's still enjoyable. So yeah, I get what you're saying, Father, on that. I think this would be the same.
I was recently looking at this was some research. I forget I think it was for a class I was taking, but there was, personality tests are something that's out there, and frankly, they're not great. But one of the common things in personality tests that you get asked about is like, do you consume media on a repeat basis, or do you just watch things once? And I know there are people who watch things once. I have a friend in California he watches things once. And that is not, and he's always like, I would bring him over to watch a movie, and I'd want to show him a movie that I enjoy. And he's like, "Are you sure? I mean, you've seen this before." And it's like, dude, radically different approaches to consumption of media. And in this personality test I was looking at, I didn't take it, but in looking at it, one of the questions was about this: how do you consume media? Do you watch things once or multiple times? And it was if you watched things only once, it wanted to classify you as open to experience, as opposed to being closed to experience, which is if you consume media multiple times. I'm going, no, you don't understand.
Right.
You see more when you watch more.
Right.
And so this is a form of openness to experience. I'm exploring this piece of art on a deeper level. And you can't do that on just a cursory once through watch.
You already listened to that music once. Why would you listen to it more?
Yeah.
Well, and you're not the same person the next time you watch it or listen to it or read it or whatever. Like, I'm rereading. But I'm reading The Lord of the Rings again for the umpteenth time. I'm in the 20th, 25th, whatever it is. But I haven't read it in probably 15 years, maybe even since the movies came out. And I'm much older now, obviously, and it's so different now reading it. It is so much more. I'm pulling, even after having read it 20 times, there's so much more I'm still pulling out of it. So yeah, I think that reading, rewatching, re-listening, totally worth it.
Yeah.
All right. Jimmy, did you have some final notes on this episode?
No, other than I should have said thank you, Heraclitus, instead of thank you, Empedocles.
Okay.
That was the line, because he's famed for allegedly having said no man can step into the same river twice, because you're not the same man and it's not the same river.
Right. So I did mention we have some listener feedback, and Our first feedback comes from our last episode, Observer's Paradox. New Jersey Esperantist writes on YouTube, Dom, I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but be patient. I'm sure you will be thrilled with what's yet to come. P.S. I'm very happy that you're taking these episode by episode instead of, say, 5 at a time. I'm not sure what I said that requires me to be patient, but I'm sure I said something last time where I expressed a little frustration, perhaps. But yeah, I am being patient. I actually am tempted to watch ahead. These are short enough that when I get to the end of one episode, I'm thinking maybe I should. But I'm restraining myself because I really do want to take them one at a time. So.
And I've decided to take that approach as well. I watched the first 6 episodes within the first week that they all dropped. But then once we got into the podcasting, I thought, I see the value in doing this one at a time and not sort of peeking ahead before we talk about them on air, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree. And then also on this episode, Lloyd writes via YouTube, Secrets of Star Trek crew, thank you for actually bringing a joy to Mondays. Your efforts are appreciated. You brought up the trope of captains disobeying orders. Do you know of any Star Trek story where a traitor, knowing that the captain will most likely disobey an order, set them up with an order that if the captain disobeys it, will take the ship exactly where the traitor actually wants the ship to go? If there isn't such a story, it could possibly make for an interesting one.
The closest I know to that, and I don't know that it does that exactly, is in one of the later seasons of DS9, where Commander Eddington has joined the Maquis, and he tricks Sisko into going to a Maquis planet to rescue people.
Right. Yeah, Eddington manipulates Sisko a few times like that, where it's more. I don't think it's as much to disobey an order as much as to just play on on Sisko's personality, knowing what he would do.
Yeah, and he's got this whole Tale of Two Cities thing going with him.
Yes, calls him Javert. Yeah, but yeah, I mean that's an interesting idea that the using a captain's proclivity to disobey orders. And then finally, we have some feedback on an older episode when we discussed Strange New Worlds Lost in Translation. And Truly Awesome New Mexico Catholic writes, I didn't get around to this episode until now, but the discussion is very interesting. When I was watching it, it didn't just seem like a space horror, but specifically like the movie Event Horizon. I noticed several similarities, but especially in Event Horizon, the baddies, basically demons, attack the characters using trauma or unresolved events from the character's past. This seems almost exactly like Uhura and especially Ramon. Anyway, I really don't like Event Horizon, but enjoyed this episode, so now, when it comes up, I can say Star Trek did it better and in less time. So and that's the one where Uhura has to replay the traumatic deaths of her family while trying to communicate with a new alien and trying to understand it. It's using her memories of traumatic events to try to cross the translation barrier. So, very good. Well, thank you all for your feedback. We do appreciate it. And now we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Trek, including Patrick M., Kira M., Julia K., Martin R., and Patricia V. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. This StarQuest show is also brought to you by Exodus 90 and the Exodus 90 app, a daily companion to help you grow closer to God and to become the man you want to be. This summer, join the Enthronement to the Sacred Heart, the Exodus 90 Summer Book Club, and St. Michael's Lent, beginning August 15th and leading up to the Feast of St. Michael the Archangel on September 29th. Go to exodus90.com/SQPN for a 14-day free trial to the Exodus 90 app and to learn more about St. Michael's Lent. That's exodus90.com/SQPN to join us for St. Michael's Lent starting August 15th. So that's it from us. We'd love to know what you thought of imposter syndrome. You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek. our Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Send an email to trek@sqpn.com. Visit our Discord community at sqpn.com/Discord, or leave a comment on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia, where you can see us record the show. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the next episode of Prodigy, The Fast and the Curious. Until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Trek.
And before I sign off, because I was unsuccessful in getting your attention via video cues, I just thought I'd mention, this because this is Star Trek related. I was at the Midwest Catholic Family Conference in Wichita this weekend, and I actually got a Star Trek question. I was sitting at my book table, and a gentleman came up and said, my wife and I want to know Voyager or DS9. And I said, DS9.
Of course.
And I said, Voyager has some good stuff in it, but on balance, DS9 is better. And he thanked me, although I think he was the Voyager fan.
Go back to the very early episodes of Secrets of Star Trek, and you can find us discussing our favorite captains and favorite episodes. Although, Father, we haven't got that from you. We'll need to do that in a future special episode. We'll get your
sounds like a good idea.
Well, anyway, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Trek.
Yeah, thank you, and live long and prosper.
And Father Jason Tyler, thank you as well.
Thank you very much.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, take heart knowing that faith is never futile.